Acidic Swamp Ooze is a classic, neutral, basic, 3/2 for 2 mana whose card text reads Battlecry, destroy your opponent's weapon. According to Hearthstone, Ooze is used in 6% of all of its decks and is picked 64% of the time in Arena. Adwicta rates Ooze as good in Arena, while Trump rates Ooze as excellent, the 5th best neutral card out of 83. You receive golden oozes at level 57 and 58 of Rogue, so if your opponent plays a golden ooze, it gives away the information that they are an experienced Rogue player, if that matters at all. 3 attack and 2 health are fair stats for a 2-mana minion, but we really want more than that out of a card to make it viable and constructed. Ooze delivers with a battlecry that can be devastating against certain deck types. A little more than half of the classes in Hearthstone have weapons available to them, not including Blingtron. So you do have to accept that a good amount of the time, Ooze will do nothing more than be a 3/2 minion. However, the potential to kill a 7-mana card like Gorehowl with a 2-mana card is more than enough to make up for all the times that Ooze is just a Bloodfin Raptor. In Arena, Ooze is extremely good in my opinion. You're already looking to fill out your 2-slot with 3/2s, and Ooze has the bonus potential to create a huge swing in the game for free. One thing we have to talk about when we are evaluating Ooze is the other big weapon removal card in the game, Harrison Jones. Currently in high-level play, Harrison is favored over Ooze, mostly because his effect is even more powerful as it destroys the weapon and gives you that all-important card draw. Harrison is by no means strictly superior to Ooze though, so here are a few reasons why you might want to run Ooze over Harrison. First off, budget. Ooze costs 0 dust, while Harrison costs 1,600. Ooze does a perfectly fine job of countering weapon-heavy strategies on its own, so in my opinion, there's no need to break the bank crafting Harrison if you don't have him. Mana cost. A 5-mana 5/4 is just way too slow for some decks, or the 5-mana slot is too overcrowded with other cards that are essential to his strategy. So in fast decks like Shockedin or Zoo, if you want to add in weapon hate, I would definitely tend towards the Ooze over Harrison. Card count. If you want to increase the consistency with which you draw your weapon counters, you can put 2 Oozes in your deck, while you can only put 1 Harrison in. You can even put in all 3 if you're feeling really frisky. Card draw. Card draw is a liability in fatigue and milling decks, so Ooze is the superior choice in these types of decks. As with all Battlecry cards, learning when to play a minion just for his body and when to save him for his Battlecry is a skill that takes time to develop, and to some degree is a matter of personal preference and playing philosophy. Obviously, against non-weapon classes, you should just drop Ooze for the body. I'll take a moment to talk about my own personal philosophy when it comes to playing Ooze in Constructed. Against rogues, I like to be greedy, but not too greedy. There are almost no circumstances where I would drop him without getting at least some of a Wicked Knife. I usually want to get at least a full Wicked Knife or a Deadly Poison, if possible. It's not great to wait for a Tinker's Oil, as they will often play it and flurry in the same turn, never giving you the opportunity to dissolve it. Against Paladin, I like to get at least half a True Silver or a few charges of a Sword of Justice. Dissolving Light's Justice is not very powerful in my opinion. It's almost the same as just playing the Ooze naked. If we're nearing turn 8 and I think Tyrion's coming, I will hold the Ooze to make sure that I can kill the Ashbringer. If push comes to shove, I'm not above dropping the Ooze and completely whiffing on the Battlecry, especially against aggro Paladin. Against Shaman, if Doomhammer is a common weapon in the meta, I'll hold on to Ooze for dear life unless they offer me some really juicy situation like causing Power Mace's Death Rattle to whiff. Against Warrior, I'll never play Ooze naked. I'll take a War Axe if I feel pressured to, but really you want to get a Death Spite or a Gorehowl out of it. Hunter is one of the hardest classes to get Ooze timing right on. Ooze is game-changing if you can dissolve an Eaglehorn Bow, but if you're foregoing your turn 2 minion versus a Hunter, that's pretty sketchy. My philosophy is to wait for the bow even if it means missing a 2-drop because Hunters are likely to run 2/1s that make the Ooze's body not so great anyways, but that may be wrong. Against Warlock, I don't save Ooze for Jaraxxus unless I'm already ahead enough where I can afford to, or we're getting really close to a turn where Jaraxxus would be really good and I suspect he has it in his hand. Other than the art of saving Battlecries, Ooze is pretty straightforward to play. The only thing I would add is to pay attention to the death rattles of weapons. Play Ooze on a Death Spite before dropping any other minions you don't want to get damaged. And make sure to remove his Acolytes and Armor Smiths before dissolving the Death Spite. Clear Shaman's mechs before dissolving Power Mace if you can. Just stuff like that. Ooze has okay synergy with return this minion to your hand effects, as its battlecry is pretty powerful. Blingtron's symmetric effect can be turned completely in your favor with Ooze. Nerubar Weblord doubles the cost of Ooze. So this is a Zoo deck made by a guy called Godkiller, who finished rank 1 in A last season, I believe. Zoo is not very popular in the meta right now, but somehow he made it work, so I'm just basing this deck off of Godkiller's. He did not have Ooze in the original, but I added Ooze to show how Ooze can fit better into a faster deck than Harrison would. So we've got our Ooze. We only put one Ooze in because Ooze as a 3/2 body is not really strong enough. It's more of a tech card, so putting one in is fine. Putting two in is pushing it for having more weak minions than Zoo can afford to fit into its really tight and aggressive strategy. And there's really no cards that synergize with it or anything, so I'm just going to talk very briefly about the different cards here. He put in Immortal Coil. It's just a good utility card. Power of Overwhelming can just help your minions trade really well. 2 Abusive Sergeants. Those are pretty standard in Zoo. They're just a really powerful early game card. Elven Archer can just help you do the 1 damage. There's a lot of 1 health minions around, so it develops your board and does damage for very little cost. 2 Flame Imps, 2 Voidwalkers. Those just go in every Zoo deck. They're really good. Worgen Infiltrator, he did not have this in his deck. He had a Leper Gnome. It's just my own twist on it. I kind of prefer Worgen over Leper Gnome. Dark Bomb helps you control the board. Usually Zoo doesn't have as many spells as this guy put in, but I guess it works for him. Direwolf Alpha, just a really good card since you're going to have a bunch of things on the board anyway. Since you can juggle the buffs with Direwolf when something dies, if you have like a bunch of imps from Implosion out or something, Direwolf is really good for turning like the 4/1 attack imps into like 4/2 attack imps essentially. Haunted Creeper is just a really sticky minion that carries buffs really well. 1 Ironbeak Owl. There's a lot of things you want to silence nowadays. There's Sylvanuses and Belchers that are really common, so 1 Ironbeak Owl is a really good addition. Knife Juggler. Knife Juggler has amazing synergy with Implosion, and it also synergizes with Creeper, and just the fact that you have a bunch of little minions is also good. Nerubian Egg, really good in Zoo, because Zoo is most weak to board clears, and Nerubian Egg is really strong against board clears. Just 1 Harvest Golem. Harvest Golem's a really solid, sticky minion. I'm not sure why he has 1 instead of 2, probably just for mana curve reasons or something. Implosion lets you develop your board and clear the opponent's board at the same time, which is just a perfect card for Zoo. Dark Iron Dwarf develops your board and buffs a minion, pretty much what you're looking for in Zoo. Same for Defender of Argus, and also the taunts are very relevant now that there's a bunch of aggressive hunter decks around. The taunting 2 sticky minions can just be a really big thing towards your self-preservation. Piloted Shredder, it's a really great minion, but once you're hitting 4 drops in Zoo, you're kind of getting up there. You don't want your curve to get too high with Zoo, so he's just got 1 Piloted Shredder in here. And Doomguard is just, even though it discards 2 cards, it's just such a strong tempo play. You almost have to put 2 Doomguards in Zoo. I've seen some people that don't, but it's just a really good card. Let's take the deck into Ranked and see how it fares. Okay, so we're against a hunter. It's, I think, usually in hunter's favor if it's like a mid-range hunter. I think against face hunter we are favored, but I don't have much experience with Zoo in the current Goblins versus No meta, so I'm not going to speculate too much on that. I keep the Mortal Coil in case he throws out a Leopard Gnome. I think that may have not been a good choice. We may want something like Flame Imp more, but luckily the top of our deck bailed us out and we did get our Flame Imp, so we're starting out really well here. He's thinking about what he wants to do. That may mean he's a face hunter because he has a 1-drop as opposed to a mid-range hunter. He coins out a Scientist. Scientist trades really well with our Flame Imp, and we'll get a secret for him. We draw Haunted Creeper, which is really lucky. We needed a 2-drop most of all, and that's what we got. So the top of our deck continues to bail us out here. So he trades into the Flame Imp like we might expect. And we don't know what that secret is, but then he plays 2 Leper Gnomes, so it's pretty common for face hunters to only run explosive trap, so I'm thinking the most likely scenario is that that is an explosive trap. So we Mortal Coil, that's pretty obvious. We get a Nerubian Egg, which is really good against explosive trap, so I'm thinking we're just going to play that and trade into the Lepronome because we don't want to take the additional damage. He plays an Eaglehorn Bow, and he goes face like you would expect from a face hunter. But we teched in our counter, so we're going to get to see Ooze shine here. And the only question is, like, do you want to attack in first? And obviously you do want to attack in first to make sure that you don't kill your Ooze. And there we go. That's a really strong play to kill his Eaglehorn Bow. And we get a 4/4 out from the Nerubian Egg, so even though we're at 16 life on turn 4 against a face hunter, it's not as bleak as you might think it would be. Second trap, again I expect that to be explosive, so that is going to kill one of our minions and do 2 more damage to our face, which is pretty sketchy, but we haven't lost yet by any means. We're still in this. And it actually turns out to be misdirection instead of explosive. I have seen that in some face hunters nowadays, a misdirection in addition to explosive. So that's actually a little better for us because it doesn't do damage to our face. And we just decide to drop the minions that fit on our curve. Dropping Doomguard would be excessively wasteful. We don't really need Doomguard that badly right now, so we'll just drop the 4 and the 1. And he drops a beast and he kill commands. So the good news, I guess, is that he wasn't able to use his hero power there, so he's not maxing his damage, which may mean that he's got a lot of damage in hand that he wants to get out as soon as possible. So I may want to just not tap in this scenario. I can kill all of the Haunted Creeper to get the beast off of the board. But the question is that worth it, or do I want to just push as much damage as possible? And what I end up deciding to do is to use the Knife Juggler Implosion, since we had the combo in our hand and it's like an insane combo. Unfortunately, we only get 2 imps, so it's not as insane as it could be, but we just go face and hope for the best. Unleash the Hounds is pretty bad here, and he does have it. But it's not lethal unless he has a second kill command or an arcane golem. I think that's it. And the fact that he's pausing here says to me that he does not have lethal, and there he trades off, so either he's BMing us or he doesn't have lethal. He's got a Wolf Rider, so he was 1 off lethal. So we're a little fortunate here. It came down to the wire, but Doomguard by itself is not quite enough, I don't think, but we do have a Direwolf, so we have got maybe like 2 or 3 damage over lethal, which is great. And the Juggle hits face if that wasn't enough. So there's a game. A zoo with an Ooze, and you saw that sometimes Ooze really can change the outcome of the game. We were 2 damage off of losing that game, and we took out what was essentially a 6 damage Eaglehorn Bow. So Ooze definitely won that game, as it can win you mini games.